This is Yannick Basie, the man who brought African showboating to England. Defenders just didn't know what to do with him. Half the time, they were left dumbfounded trying to figure out what the hell you just stunt. The fans couldn't believe their eyes. Either they just kept chanting, "Are you sure he went Brazilian?" before tragedy struck. He was so good people used to joke that it should be the first player to get 6-star skill moves on FIFA. And at the speak, he became the most expensive African player of all time. Look, if you think Jamie Vardy was a miracle, let me tell you, this guy wasn't far off. Despite growing up in England, by the time he turned 16, he had never even stepped foot into an academy. His real dream was to become a rapper. It was just that one day, according to Basie himself, he was watching it on the TV and thought to himself, well, I guess I could give it a try. But after only 4 months trying out for an academy, he just got beloved. Instead, he gave up on all of that and went straight to playing for his local team in the tier of English football, where they paid him $2 per match and gave him a free burger for every goal he scored. As you may imagine, soon ball. Asiwa's giving up against the plan was to go work for his girlfriend's father as a carpenter. After all, realistically, there were zero chances she'd ever make it, except for one thing. You see, though, Vash himself was actually born in France and not Congo. When he moved to England with his parents at 7 months of age, his African cousins came along. And well, let's just say this thing has to be genetic, because 3 of them went pro, and they were serious ballers, in fact. You know, Elamanalou from Newcastle. Yeah, that's his cousin, so it happened. Then was pretty lucky, just as Bolasi. Prepared to join the workforce, one of his cousin's friends got injured right after joining a team in Malta called Floriana Soin, an effort to get Basie to give football another chance. And with a team looking for a temporary replacement, his cousin asked for a few favors, got the material there, and somehow it worked. But really his luck didn't end there. Once he was alone playing in Malta, Basie didn't really know what to do with his free time. I mean, he clearly gets bored easily. But since he had always known how to edit from back when he made rap music videos for himself, he started recording his matches and posting compilations of his own highlights on YouTube and iKid. Unatunde sent those links to his cousin's agent. The guy passed them around, and his talent must have been glaringly obvious, because out of nowhere, yet clubs from all over Europe coming for him. Offenheim Storm Arler Pouth RG. It was unbelievable in the end. He picked Plymouth because he just wanted to go back home. And after all, back then, they were doing better than Lur. But once at the club, it was immediately clear they did not believe yet that what it took to slide right into a championship teams. So they kept trying to send him on loan, and it was harder than you may have expected. First came Atrial at Denham in the 4th tier, but they sent him back. And with a transfer window coming to a close without him being able to find a par club, irony struck. And he ended up going on a 6-month loan precisely to Russian Indiamonds, the non-league. I guess you could say a mature club was the academy he had given up on a few years earlier. Thankfully, when the winter market came around, he managed to get himself a move to Barnet and Donce there a note on. Leaded Hestart performing a lot better, but he was lucky enough that Tony Finney-Nan, ex-Crystal Palace player turned agent, was on a stands watching, and once that match was over, he went up to his parents and told him, "I can make your son a Premier League player in 3 years." Only a few months later, Bolasi was already getting back from his loan, and Eventho Pouth would end up not just getting relegated, but going bankrupt. By then, he had made enough of a name for himself that he managed to quickly step to Bristol City before the ship's ank being signed for only 10-0 on with their assistant manager CL, claiming that it is unbelievable that a player like Palasi was available at this price. This is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, and he wasn't wrong. 8 months later, with his team about to succumb in their relegation showdown against Coventry, it was Basie who came on late and scored the goal that them near saved the club, and soon the season was over. Notably was he voted the club's Young Player of the Year, but he achieved all of that while legendary scouting at the time. Crystal Palace manager Duge Fredman watched him closely, and the result was simple. Only a year after arriving at Bristol for about the value of Aust Honda Civic, she was being veiled at £500,000. And now all he had to do was get Palace back to the Premier League. When he arrived at the club, they were sitting bottom of the table with 3 defeats in our first 3 league matches. The fans were already preparing for a crisis. Everyone could see how much they depended on Wilfred Zaha's every manager would put trade defenders on him, and he was done. But well, one of the first things free dasked Palasi was whether he thought that could be as good as Zahan. And he replied, "I'll better by October." Not only were Palace far from the bottom of the table, but with Bolation Zaz scrambling the brains of every defender who came in their way, they were already in the top 4 underweight the promotion playoffs. As Bolasi himself said, "On my first season, nobody knew about me. Every defender concentrated on Zahazo. I was always free to do something special for the rest of the year." He gave the club everything he had. It seemed nothing could stop him. Not when douche Fredman controversially left in the middle of the season. Not when the Congolese national team called him up event. Then he said the only thing that mattered was getting Palace back to the top. And when the promotional playoff semifinals did come with Palace 160 minutes into the tie, and still without a goal, was Beza pulled off some magic to put. But somehow, when the day came, he wasn't on a starting 11. He had sacrificed everything for that moment. He had helped him start Palace's second golden era. Hell, he was on a championships team of the year, and still no matter what when they won. He was there with a smile on his face celebrating arm-in-arm with Zaha. That's just the kind of guy. He shouldn't just bring the flair. He had the work rate and mentality to go along with it. There was only one problem. He couldn't score. As Palace's assistant manager said, every game he'd go past 3 or 4 players. At pace, using the most wonderful skills, but when it was time to shoot, he would overhit it, and the ball would fly 6 feet above the bar. Just as it was becoming more and more worrying that Bazi Elani Formal Academy training the next year, he went to full season without scoring. This would have been unacceptable for any other Premier League forward, but when it came to Basie, it didn't matter that year. Even with Zaha leaving to United just as the club took the step up to the top flight, Basie completely took over the team's creative side and led them to one of their greatest ever Eason's not just managing to survive relegation for the first time in the Premier League, but almost clutching a top 10 finish with every match. It became more and more clear that no defender in the world could stop him with manager. Neapolis a ton point claiming that faces mashed Skylar Walker so bad have forced Red to sub him off and change his tactics, but still no match. That season could compare to the one that became known as Christenbühl. Picture this second to last match of the season. Liverpool need to beat Palace by as many goals as possible if they want. Have a chance at the title with 12 minutes left on the clock. They're up by 3 goals, and suddenly it started. Damon Delaney gets the first, then Bala Sidarts up in the counterattack and assists White Gale, who goes on to level the match 2 minutes later. Out of the 12,000 matches in the Premier League, only 24 times had the team come back from 3 goals behind. And on this one specifically, as the New York Times wrote, Basie was front and center. Liverpool's right back, Glenn Johnson, was humiliated by him so many times that night the Pund, it's criticized him so harshly he ended up having a public meltdown on Twitter. That's the effect. Defenders, it was a different breed. They didn't even know how to react to Salem Party would goon to say other clubs would have tried to change Bolasi, but recognized he was a maverick and trusted him. That's why he improved so much. In just a few years, his uniqueness is what makes him special, and soon that will be evident to everyone else the next year. Even with Zaha back from United, it seemed the only time Palace played well was when Bolasai was on his day 10 matches. And they had only one woe, and even one of those was thanks to a Basie winner. But the next match as Palace once again trailed behind against Liverpool, Basie popped off, not just allowing Dwight Gale to score Ish's 30-yard shot rebounded off the post, but then flicking a sombrero over Lenand, assisting the second as Palace took a 3-1 win against one of the biggest teams in the country to escape their relegation zone. And just as the more casual Premier League fans began questioning whether he had done it on purpose, or if you had just gotten lucky just a month later again. Tottenham with Sadwin Eriksson pinning him against the corner in one motion. He pulled off a roulette and flicked the ball over them, sending every fan into a frenzy, replaying the clip over and over again trying to figure out how to do it. Only for one of his teammates to tell the press that he's done crazier things in training every day. It's like watching street football. But as much as everyone wanted more than Bolasie was called up for his first ever African Cup of Nations, and this time he wasn't going to say no right on the first match. He scored the equalizer to clutch the draw. But once they found themselves 62 minutes deep into the quarterfinals, losing to Neil, precisely to their rivals well, the other Congo turning that game around everything to the fans. And so, Basis held up, yet again assisting their first goal and jump-starting the comeback. That eventually allowed the Democratic Republic of Congo to take the bronze medal, their best finish since they had won the competition 47 years earlier. And guess what once? The team of the tournament came out aside from their goalkeeper. Bolasie was the only Congolese player to make the listing. If it seemed things couldn't much better than on his first game back in the Premier League, he came in late against Newcastle to assist equalizer, then pulled off 2 incredible assists versus QPR, but nothing compared to what he did against Sunderland after a goal-less first half. Midway through the match, Alan Parthu decided to try out playing Bolasie in a more central role, and damn 3 minutes, and he was already assisting Glenn Murray to me. Newts after that he had scored his first with a true striker finish in the very next attack. hell of the keeper to score another, and only 11 minutes after the first goal, he completed his hat-trick by dribbling the keeper. And then a defender before smacking it into the open net. Sharan, to celebrate, the fans began chanting, "It's like we're watching Brazil." And one thing is sure that looked nothing like Crystal Palace. Not a single one of their players that ever scored the hat-trick in the Premier League, let alone one of the fastest in its history. I can't even imagine. Had would have happened, that party not sub Alasov so soon after his third goal, but regardless, after ruining Jed's last ever match at Anfield, beating Liverpool 3-2 United again this time, getting another assist and hitting the post and at one point, even sweeping the ground with his hand before going past the love wren. I'm guessing they thought to themselves, if we can't beat him, we might as well join him. And with a 25-year-old leading the league in successful, take on alongside Hazard, Sanchez, Coutinho, and Sterling, they joined Tottenham in the Cha. Sefer signing, putting down 20 million only for Partey to tell the press that he'd only sell him for 40 to 60 million. Knowing them well, that at the time, that would have made him the most expensive player in the league's history. In other words, she wanted to keep him around, and for a good reason. The next season, he began experimenting with getting Basie back in that central role, and the results were stunning, even though from October to New Year's. Basie would not get on the score sheet in any of the games he played in the wing on the 3 occasions in which he played him at the center. Height again scored as they beat Liverpool, then got a brace against Newcastle, and assisted their only goal versus Southampton. But just as everyone began wondering if the final form of Bolasie had been unlocked, he tore the muscle of his GFN over those 2 months without him. The same team that had been sitting just below the top 5 went completely winless. There was no doubt Basie was the heart and soul of that squad. And once he was back, knowing that any hope of finishing in the top 7 was lost, I guess they realized there was only one other why to make history by leading the club to Europe for the first time ever. So he gave everything in the FC up, winning a penalty with 4 minutes left in a goalless quarterfinal, and then scoring the opener in the Smile, led Palace to the final for only the second time in their history the day of the match. It all seemed straight out of a fairy tale. Growing up, Palesa could see Wembley Stadium straight from his bedroom window. The date of the final coincided perfectly with the birthday of his mom, who still lived in that same house only a few blocks away. But event thought they push Edge United into extra time, even though it seemed like destiny in the end. They lost no matter what to transfer offers, kept coming in. Tottenham especially seemed to be a lover him. But with Basie being an Arsenal fan, Head didn't really like that idea, and so with billionaire Farhad Moshira buying Everton and handing Ronald Cow £100 million transfer budget, she completely hijacked the transfer offering, bring Palace a deal worth £35 million, not just making Basie Everton's all-time record signing or Poli's biggest ever sale, but the second most expensive Rican player of all time, just £1 million of Sadio Mane, which just moved to Liverpool, all less than 10 years since he had been playing for £20 a game. And when confronted by a reporter with the fans' worry that he turned out to be yet another disappointing signing after the likes of Schneiderlin, Clennon Deher replied, "I know I am worth it." But in reality, Bolasie would turn out to be one of Everton's worst ever signings to start off. If everything seemed incredible, Bolasie and Lukaku were completely in tune with each other. They even spoke this Amakongal's dialect, so defenders couldn't even understand what they said to each other. Bolish himself even went on an uncharacteristic run of 5 goal contributions in just 7 starts. But then they played United, and in a duel with Anthony Martial, Basie didn't just rupture his ACL, he ruptured his meniscus as well. And that's what you call a career. Ender, even after 11 months out, Basie felt like he was being rushed back into the pitch, claiming that Everton's medical staff hadn't taken proper care of him. That event, though, he stayed extra hours at their ground, every day for over a year. When his old Crystal Palace physio examined him, he was shocked at how weak his knee still was, and with Mara Silva arriving and bringing with him new records, signing Richarlison, Basie was replaced, and he just couldn't accept that, even with Leicester trying to bring him in to replace Mazan Palestrying to work out a comeback. He insisted on going on loan, hoping he could earn back his place at Everton first. There was Van Ender. Sporting in Middlesbrough towards the end. He even stayed with under-23s for 6 months, but eventually had to leave. The club, in that point between wages and his transfer fee, had cost him about $1 million for every game he had played. It seemed completely hopeless. But now 3 years later, after stint in Turkey, 2nd year and 2 months at Swan Space designed for Chris Humain Brazil, the man with all the facts and tricks left for the land of beautiful football. And only a few weeks ago, held the club to an historic Coral went over Vash Hut. The GMA, he scared the assist twice. He tempted a bicycle kick and did whatever this was. Suddenly, once more, the fans were chanting, "Are you sure you a?" And Brazilian, I really think that Bolasie may have finally found a home. Subscribe for more.